On Interstate 70, the November wind lashed against the windshield of the old SUV I was driving. My palms were sweaty even though it was only 45 degrees outside. I had driven nearly 800 miles from Colorado Springs to the outskirts of Lancaster, Ohio, the place where everything began. The place that boxed me in throughout my youth with expectations I never had a say in. I turned on the radio to drown out the silence clawing at my mind, but switched it off within seconds. No song could muffle those memories. The last time I went back to that house was 5 years ago, after a vicious argument with my mother when she coldly said, "Hannah, you're wasting your life in that pointless uniform." The car turned onto a gravel driveway leading to a faded blue wooden house nestled among bright red maple trees. I parked beside a brand new black sedan that clearly belonged to my younger brother, Tyler. 3 years younger, yet always the pride of the family, as my father never missed a chance to declare to anyone who'd listen. I stepped out, pulled my coat tighter, and opened the trunk. The uniform bag still sat there, heavy, its seams perfectly folded. Inside was my colonel's insignia, something no one in my family knew about. I had never mentioned it, never bragged. Not because I wasn't proud, but because I was exhausted from the look in their eyes every time I brought up my military career. A mix of pity and confusion, like I was a child who refused to grow up. The front door swung open before I could knock. "You're back, huh?" My mother's voice was dry. She stood in the doorway in a flour-dusted apron. No hug, no warmth in her gaze. "Your brother and his wife arrived this morning. We're about to set the table." I walked in, the autumn chill stopping at the threshold. The house hadn't changed much. Still smelled faintly of burnt almond cookies, same worn beige rug, same wall lined with photos. I glanced quickly, all of them featured Tyler. His MBA graduation, the opening of his law office, his kid's birthday party. I wasn't in a single one. I slipped off my shoes, hung my coat on the old wooden hook by the door. My dad appeared from the living room holding a Sam Adams beer. "Anna." He gave a nod, voice neutral. "You're just in time. Tomorrow's the Partners Summit at Century Dynamics. Your mom thinks you should come, if you're not busy with whatever it is you do." I nodded, swallowing the bitterness in my throat. Whatever it is didn't quite cover that his daughter was now a senior officer representing the Pentagon, overseeing the largest defense contract between the U.S. military and the very company he'd worked at for 30 years. Tyler just got appointed director of project development, my mom called from the kitchen. Kayla got into the most expensive private kindergarten in the state. They're doing really well. Be sure to congratulate them. I nodded again. Every word they spoke reminded me I wasn't supposed to be there. I went upstairs, fingers brushing the wooden railing. Scratches still etched from the days Tyler and I raced to the top. My old door still bore the sign "Hannah's Room" in silver glitter paint. I pushed it open, and it looked like it hadn't moved past 2011. Purple floral bedspread, shelves stacked with Anne of Green Gables, my crooked Ohio State diploma still on the wall. No sign of a soldier who had been deployed to Poland, South Korea, and most recently, worked inside the Pentagon. I set my bag down, unzipped it, and took out the uniform. The deep green fabric clashed against the pastel colors of the room. I smoothed the shoulder tabs, where two bright silver eagles gleamed under the yellow light. I remembered the night I called to tell my parents I'd gotten a full ROTC scholarship. There was 30 seconds of silence before my dad flatly said, "The military's for kids with no other options." I had plenty. I simply chose the path they never tried to understand. I hung the uniform behind some old dresses. Tomorrow, at the biggest summit of the year for Century Dynamics, I wouldn't just be the stubborn daughter they tried to forget. I'd be Colonel Hannah Monroe, official military representative with final approval authority over every aspect of that defense contract. But tonight, I'd stay quiet. I'd sit at the dinner table, listen to them shower Tyler with praise like he invented electricity. I'd smile at the right times, nod politely, and wait for morning, when the small world they idolized would turn upside down. Dinner began with clinking glasses and laughter coming from Tyler's end of the table. My mother had arranged everything perfectly. Ivory linens, gold-rimmed china, cinnamon candles between the roast chicken and creamy mushroom soup. Yet, behind the presentation, I could sense a hollowness in every glance, every comment. Tyler was just invited by the CEO to join the strategic team for the new defense contract, my mom boasted, spooning soup into his bowl. He's amazing, truly. I paused mid-pour. Defense contract. Too much of a coincidence. What contract is that? I asked, keeping my tone light. Something about digital security? She glanced at Dad. With the Pentagon, they're developing some internal protection system. Tyler's managing the coding team. Dad added, the CEO hand-picked him. Not everyone gets trusted with responsibilities like that. I smiled, filled the glass, and sat down. They were talking about Project Helix, the one I was directly supervising for the military. I'd be reviewing the entire rollout, including everything Tyler was in charge of. But no one at the table knew that. So, Hannah, Aunt Bonnie, my mom's younger sister, chimed in, turning to me. What are you doing these days? A brief silence. I saw my mother squint slightly. She hated questions like that. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she didn't want to hear it. Still in the military, I replied, cutting into my chicken. I've been relocated to DC to assist with some strategic operations. So still, in uniform on base. Mom gave a tight smile. Why don't you ever post anything like Tyler? His LinkedIn's full of achievements. But you, I still see your old cheerleader photos. I looked at her. That word, cheerleader, carried a note of regret, like everything I'd done after that had been one long mistake. My work isn't for public sharing, Mom, I answered gently. Oh, very classified, huh? Tyler laughed. Maybe she's a secret colonel-level agent. Sounds like a Hollywood plot. The room laughed. I did too, but the phrase colonel level echoed in my head. My brother had just said the exact rank I held, without knowing it. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I still get congratulatory letters from the Department of Defense with each promotion, but I guess they never made it to your mailbox. What letters? Dad frowned. Your mom never mentioned anything. Mom stayed quiet, her focus fixed on the garlic bread she'd just placed on the table. I turned to Aunt Bonnie. Did you make it to the pinning ceremony 2 years ago? In San Antonio? She nodded quickly. Of course I did. I even hugged you and cried, remember? Everyone was so moved. When General Carson gave his speech, I got chills. No one else at the table said a word. Aunt Bonnie glanced around, then pressed her lips together. Amy didn't go, she said softly. The air thickened with silence. I sipped my water and looked at my mother. That day, you said you had the flu and Dad was caught up in end-of-quarter meetings. Honey, my mom said, setting down her spoon and avoiding my gaze. I didn't think the event was that important. I thought it was just some small thing. Small enough that one of the 3 attendees was a brigadier general? I asked, not raising my voice, but no longer hiding the bitterness. Tyler sat quietly, swirling wine in his glass. I thought you were just like a military instructor or something, he said. I didn't know you did anything that advanced. I didn't answer. I didn't blame Tyler. No one ever told him the truth. He only ever heard the oversimplified, biased, and distorted version passed down by my parents, that his sister was the stubborn one, who gave up law school to go play soldier with no end in sight, the one who was unstable, unfocused, not investing in her future. What I actually did, tactical security analysis, interagency coordination, managing nationwide cyber attack response plans, in their eyes, never measured up to an office job signing contracts. You could have been working for a real corporation by now, my father said after a pause. If you'd followed my advice and pursued that MBA, you could be at Lockridge or Patterson, places that actually carry weight. I smiled, colder than the candle flickering inside the glass bowl at the center of the table. You don't think the Pentagon carries weight? He went silent. I stood up, gently pushing in my chair. I'm a little tired. I've got to leave early tomorrow. There's a major partner conference I'm attending. No one stopped me. Not a single follow-up question. Just the soft clink of a fork touching porcelain. Barely audible, yet in my chest, it echoed like an explosion. I walked upstairs, each step scraping against old memories. On the walls, a photo of Tyler holding the Outstanding Young Entrepreneur of Ohio trophy next to my niece's framed school certificate. Nowhere in sight was any trace of my growth. No mention of 4 international deployments. No word about what I've stopped, what I've protected. I opened my bedroom door and closed it slowly behind me. The past may not change, but tomorrow would be different. I sat on the edge of the bed. The soft glow from the night lamp spilled across my uniform, hanging silently in the closet corner. The night over Lancaster was thick, and every sound seemed sharpened. The ticking clock, the gentle creaks of the old heater pipes, and the footsteps of my mother pausing outside my door for a few seconds, then retreating. In my hand was the most recent organizational chart update from Century Dynamics, sent securely to my encrypted inbox. I scrolled to Director of Project Development, Helix, Tyler Monroe. Right beneath that was the signed statement from the Department of Defense, Military Project Lead, Colonel Hannah M. Monroe. My name topped the document for the project my own brother believed he was leading. I had imagined this moment before, returning, walking into that conference room as someone they wouldn't recognize, shattering the narratives they'd built piece by piece. But now that it was about to become reality, the feeling wasn't triumph. It was quiet. There's nothing glorious about proving your worth to the people who should have believed in you all along. I stayed up until nearly 3 a.m. adjusting each crease and stitch on my uniform's epaulets. Not for show. It was part of the rhythm I'd lived by for over a decade. Iron discipline, but never heartless. The deep red ID badge with the bold Pentagon seal gleamed under the lamp. I tucked it into my coat's inner pocket, zipped it closed, and straightened my spine, drawing in a long breath. When I pulled out of the driveway at 6:25 a.m., the whole neighborhood was still blanketed in a haze of early morning fog. I didn't leave a note on the kitchen counter, no parting words. It didn't mean I was gone forever, just that I no longer needed to explain. The Century Dynamics headquarters was only a 10-minute drive. The building had been recently renovated, a towering structure of glass and steel, stark and imposing. The company's emblem, a hawk in descent, hovered in the central atrium, casting reflections on the polished black granite floor. I parked exactly where the site diagram indicated, the space-marked military liaison. The security guard spotted me stepping out in full uniform and stood at attention. "Good morning, Colonel Monroe. You've been on the list since 5 a.m. We were notified you'd be attending in person instead of joining remotely." "No escort necessary. I know the way." He nodded, asked no questions, didn't stare like most civilians at conferences did. In the world I operated in, precision and rank speak before any introductions. The elevator carried me to the 12th floor, restricted to executives and senior project managers. The hallway was lined with ash-gray carpet, ambient lighting soft enough not to cast shadows. I walked up to the conference room, its frosted glass door etched with the words, Executive Strategy Room. Right then, Tyler stepped out from inside holding a tablet and mumbling his rehearsal. The moment he looked up, he froze. "Hannah? What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. I watched his face, a blur of confusion and disbelief, like he was trying to assemble a puzzle that didn't fit reality. "I'm here as the military representative. This morning's conference falls under my oversight." "You're wearing that..." He lowered his voice to a near whisper. "Is that rank real?" "Very real. just like the program you're leading, which now falls under my authority for review. The door opened. My father stepped out, still holding a stack of folders. He froze the moment he saw me, like someone had pulled a brake on his feet. First came surprise in his eyes, then doubt. But before he could speak, a middle-aged woman appeared behind him, stepping forward with a beaming smile. "Colonel Monroe?" Her voice was crisp and confident. "I'm Claire Jennings, Director of Strategy. On behalf of the Executive Board, welcome to Sentry Dynamics." I shook her hand, firm, measured, exact. "An honor to be here. We have a lot to cover today." "Everything's ready. CEO DeMarco and the technical team are waiting in the conference room. Please, this way." I walked in, past my father, and Tyler's stunned silence. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The meeting room was spacious, with a frosted glass oval table and a presentation screen spanning the entire wall. Everyone was already seated, men in dark suits, women in blazers and professional glasses. A few stood when I entered. One older man, with silver hair and eyes sharp as a razor, stepped forward. "Colonel Monroe, I'm CEO DeMarco. It's a great honor to have you with us in person." I shook his hand. "The Helix project is of critical importance. My presence is simply to ensure that every aspect meets national security protocols." There were nods all around. I took my seat, labeled Cole Hannah M. Monroe, Pentagon Liaison. 2 seats to my left remained empty, reserved for my father and Tyler. They walked in minutes later, faces pale. I opened the folder in front of me, my eyes fixed on the pages. I didn't need to look to know how they were staring. Tomorrow, I would review the entire technical deployment strategy. By the weekend, I'd be auditing the leadership personnel. But today, I sat here, not as someone's relative, but as the person holding final authority over a $1.1 billion contract. That evening, I returned home in civilian clothes, hung my uniform on a wooden hanger, and tucked it carefully behind the closet door. The scent of roast meat, mixed with my mother's perfume, drifted faintly through the downstairs air. Everything looked like a perfect family gathering: deep red tablecloths, polished silverware, warm golden pendant lights. And yet, the room felt colder than steel. Tyler sat at the head of the table, lounging, like the house belonged to him. Megan, his wife, wore a fitted beige dress, her lips painted deep red. My father was pouring wine, my mother plating salad. I took my seat next to Aunt Bonnie. No one asked, "How was your day?" "You guys won't believe it," Tyler said, laughing as he set down his glass. "This morning, CEO DeMarco shook my hand in front of the entire executive team. Must have been the presentation. It killed." "What did you say that impressed them so much?" Aunt Bonnie asked, eyes still on me like she was trying to balance 2 worlds at once. "I introduced a new approach for Helix's core security software," he said. "It's about integrating data flow between the OS and military-grade encryption layers." Sounds technical, but really, it's just about flexible thinking. My mom clapped, her eyes lighting up like someone just announced a TV appearance. "I always said you had a gift for tech, not like following orders in the military." I sliced into a piece of garlic bread, chewing slowly. Megan poured more wine into my glass and gave me a polite smile. "So how's everything going with you, Hannah?" she asked, trying to sound interested. "Still stationed at that base?" "Not anymore," I replied. "I'm now assigned to the Pentagon." The table paused. Tyler smirked. "You mean like admin work? Filing personnel records or something?" I looked him in the eyes, setting my glass down, keeping my tone even. "My current role involves overseeing federal-scale cybersecurity initiatives. It's a joint operation between the Department of Defense and our strategic defense industry partners." My father cleared his throat, visibly annoyed. "Sounds vague. I thought you used to be a captain or something?" My mom chimed in. "Or was it lieutenant? I can never keep those ranks straight. But have you thought about going back to school? An MBA, maybe?" A lot of folks in the military do that now, to prepare for civilian careers. I held my smile, smooth and still, like a porcelain mask. You don't need to remember the rank. It's not lieutenant or captain anymore. Tyler shrugged, chuckled. Still just the military, right? Everyone knows it's the safe place for people who can't cut it out here. Just follow orders and wait for time to pass. Aunt Bonnie shot Tyler a look like he'd just insulted a monument. I gently touched her arm to stop her. Is that really what you think? I asked, voice unchanged. You know, he said, I didn't mean offense. It's just what people assume. The military's stable, has benefits, sure, but it rarely makes real impact. My father nodded as if Tyler had just said what he couldn't. Your mother always regretted you didn't go to business school like I suggested, he said. With your grades back then, you could have been running a company by now, but you took a shortcut. Serving in the military is not a shortcut, I said, setting down my knife and fork, eyes locked on my mother. I've been through 8 training cycles, 3 international deployments, 2 top-level internal audits, and led a special operations tech unit with a multi-million-dollar budget. In the past year alone, I've reviewed at least 14 classified security assessments on the very project Tyler's working on. No one spoke, just the wall clock ticking, tapping quietly at the pride of an entire room. Megan broke the silence with a timid voice. Are you talking about Helix? Exactly, I replied. That project falls under my evaluation system. Your team is required to submit weekly progress reports to the office I'm assigned to. Tyler leaned back, arms crossed. I didn't know. I was never informed there'd be military oversight at such a high level. Not everyone gets advance notice. My father frowned. If that's true, then why didn't you say anything? I looked at him. His face tightened, as if trying to deny the reality in front of him. Because no one ever asked. My mother lowered her head, her hand trembling slightly as she held the spoon. But Hannah, if you really hold that kind of position, why didn't you tell the family? Because nothing I ever said was taken seriously. If I came home today claiming I was a CEO, you'd probably tell the whole neighborhood. But since it's the military, you see it as something temporary and hard to define. Aunt Bonnie placed a hand on my shoulder, her eyes full of empathy. Some people choose to serve without needing applause. I nodded, gazing toward the small lamp in the corner of the table. It's not that I didn't want to be understood. I just stopped trying to explain to people who never cared to listen. The room hovered somewhere between hollow and stunned. Dinner might continue, but no one had an appetite left. I lifted my glass, gave it a small raise. To Helix. It's a promising project. Let's hope the upcoming presentation passes inspection. Tyler didn't raise his glass. My father remained silent. As for my mother, her lips pressed together, like clinging to something already shattered. The morning sunlight slid across the glass facade of Sentry Dynamics, glinting off the silver insignia on my shoulder as I stepped out of the car. The chill of early dew lingered in the air, cutting through the rush of employees entering the building with coffee in hand and name badges clipped to their collars. They looked at me, then looked again when they caught the uniform and rank over my left chest. My ID badge bore the bold red line, Hannah. Monroe, Dodd Oversight. The glass doors parted. The receptionist paused mid-keystroke as I approached. A middle-aged woman glanced at the insignia and immediately stood. Good morning, Colonel Monroe. The meeting room on the 11th floor is ready. They weren't expecting your direct arrival, so the honors suite wasn't prepped. Shall I call support? No need, I answered calmly. I have the room layout. I'll go on my own. The man behind her whispered something, eyes locked on my name tag. As the elevator rose, I could feel the atmosphere of the building subtly shift, like my presence had activated an invisible layer of alertness. The doors opened. The hallway was lined with deep blue carpet, opaque glass walls leading toward the tech division. I turned right, heading straight to Conference Room A, where the Helix project coordination meeting would begin in minutes. The frosted glass door trembled slightly as I pushed it open. Inside, keyboard clicks halted. Two assistants were still connecting the presentation cables, and a software engineer froze mid-note, hands hovering over documents. Everyone turned. One of them recognized the military insignia. "Good morning, Colonel," he shot up. "Are you the military liaison?" "Yes. I'd like to quickly test the presentation equipment before the directors arrive." They nodded repeatedly, seemingly stripped of the ability to question. I moved to the central seat, the one reserved for the military side, pulled a secure USB from my breast pocket, and plugged it into the display system. The screen lit up with Helix Project, Defense Department Security Evaluation, Direct Authorization Protocol. I remained seated as the door opened again. Tyler stepped in, wearing a tailored gray suit, hair slicked neatly back. He was about to approach the screen when he stopped. His face shifted the moment he saw me in full uniform, seated squarely in the center. "Hannah?" His voice cracked halfway. What are you doing here?" "Oversight," I said, no elaboration needed. "Today is the midterm evaluation. I figured it'd be best to attend in person." Tyler blinked, his eyes darting from my silver insignia to the screen's logo. He didn't say another word, just took the seat 2 chairs to my left. His hands rested on his thighs, but his knuckles trembled faintly. My father arrived less than 3 minutes later, alongside CEO DeMarco and Claire Jennings from Strategy. The moment he saw me, he halted like he'd tripped on stone. But unlike last night, he didn't say a word. Just gave a faint nod, an acknowledgement without speech. DeMarco extended a hand. "Colonel Monroe, thank you for coming. Your direct presence underlines the importance of this evaluation. We look forward to your feedback." "I'll share my findings after the implementation team gives their update," I replied, voice even. The meeting began. Department leads presented one by one: integration engineering, layered encryption, user authentication protocols. I took detailed notes, interrupting only when discrepancies emerged between their report and the system specs. When it was Tyler's turn, the air felt thinner. He stood, plugged in his USB, but I didn't look at the screen. I looked at him. "Good morning," Tyler began. "I'll be presenting the data control flow between the user interface layer and the core system. My team proposed modifying RAM architecture to—" "Stop," I said. Not loud, but clear enough to halt the room. "Can you clarify the process, isolation method, in the event of an insider threat with unverified origin?" Tyler blinked. "Do you mean, like an advanced sandbox model?" "No," I said flatly. "I'm asking if there's an impersonation agent embedded in the secondary authentication layer, how long would the system your team built take to detect it, and how would it respond? Give me real-time numbers and response protocols." Tyler froze. He glanced at the screen, then back at me. I'd like to consult the specs with my technical team before answering." "That's not acceptable," I shook my head. "This project is no longer theoretical. This is a defense-level audit. All responses must be immediate and concrete, or I'll have to record it as a deficiency in the report." DeMarco leaned slightly forward. The room hung on every word. Tyler stiffened, then lowered his head, gripping the USB tightly. "I'm sorry, I don't have a complete answer at this time." I jotted the note down. It wasn't about retaliation. It was standard protocol in an evaluation of a project the scale of Helix. I looked around the room. Able to emphasize? "Today's goal is not to humiliate anyone, but I have a duty to ensure national data security. This project, if it fails, won't just impact Sentry Dynamics. It will affect federal coordination networks. Half measures will not be overlooked." No one objected. DeMarco nodded. Clara Jennings kept scribbling notes. I looked back at Tyler, not from above, but eye to eye. He looked like someone who'd just walked out of a suffocating dream, realizing the person he assumed would always be behind him was now sitting at the head of the table, holding the power to greenlight or kill the project. I closed my notebook. The audit continued, but the balance in the room had shifted. When the meeting ended, I collected the files, closed my document case, and reattached my military ID badge to my chest pocket. People slowly dispersed, some still casting glances at me, blending respect with confusion. No one commented on what they'd just witnessed, a stark shift in authority. But everyone understood. My father stood near the water station, hand gripping the edge of a chair. His face was pale, like someone who'd just come out of a long surgery. Tyler stood beside him, shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on some undefined point on the floor. I walked past them without stopping, without waiting for anyone to speak. As I pushed open the conference room door, a voice called behind me. "Hannah, wait." I turned. My father straightened his posture, throat tightening like every word had to scrape through decades of pride. Can we speak privately?" I looked at him and gave a slight nod. He stepped into a small office at the end of the hallway, the one he'd always called his bunker over more than 30 years at Sentry Dynamics. The door closed behind us. Silence settled like ice. He circled the desk but didn't sit. He just stood there, like if he didn't move, the truth might blur. "People are going to think I pulled strings to get you on the project." His voice was quiet, but the fear behind it was undeniable. "I was assigned by General Ford," I replied. "No one in that room this morning believes I got this role through family. They've seen my security clearance. They know I haven't used any personal connections." He exhaled, but it wasn't relief, it was resignation. "All these years I never imagined you'd go this far." I stood upright, hands behind my back, a habit formed from years of formal briefings. "Because you never cared to know." He looked up at me, then lowered his gaze like he'd been hit. His lips moved, but no words came out. I continued, "Not cold, not soft. Every time I called, emailed, texted, you never responded with anything meaningful. When I invited you to my promotion ceremony, Mom said you were busy with Q4 strategy. When I received my commendation, no one in the family asked why." He slowly sat down, clasped his hands, rubbing his thumbs together as if trying to soothe the unraveling. The confusion in his eyes now wasn't surprise. It was true disorientation. "I thought you were doing internal management at some base, overseeing logistics or training new recruits. Everything your mother said was what she wanted to believe." I cut him off. "She never wanted me to step outside the mold she crafted for me back in high school. Go to college, get a business degree, marry, have kids, stay close to home." He gave a slow nod, a nod heavier than any apology. "And Tyler?" I asked. "Do you realize his silence this morning wasn't because he felt overshadowed by his sister? It was because he was cornered by the limits of his own knowledge. He thought confidence could mask incompetence." "He's never been exposed like that," my father rasped. "He's probably falling apart." "He needs to fall apart," I said. "No one grows up when they're shielded from reality." A soft knock at the door. My mother stood outside, her shoulders drawn in, one hand clenched tightly around her purse strap. I heard the meeting was intense. I didn't respond. She glanced at my father, then back at me. "You look very dignified in uniform." I said nothing. She took a deep breath, then released a sentence I never expected to hear from her. "I was wrong, Hannah. I used to think you were running away from family responsibility. Now I see you were carrying burdens others wouldn't dare pick up." I stood there, looking at her. No hatred, no softening. "You once called me the one who strayed off course," I reminded her. "The one who was unstable, a concern for the family legacy." "I know," she nodded. "I have no excuse. All I can say is, I'm starting to understand. Maybe too late, but I mean it." The silence returned. My father stepped forward, not with the eyes of someone judging, but someone willing to learn. "I want to better understand what you're doing. If you'll allow me, I'd like to review the documents you brought today, not to evaluate, to learn." I nodded, my voice low but steady. I'll leave a technical summary. But what I've been through? Dad, you won't find it in any document. No one objected, no one turned away. They were finally silent in the right way, not to dismiss, but to listen. I stepped out of the room without looking back. Behind me, no one called out. Maybe they finally understood. Some paths aren't meant to be held back, only witnessed, if you're lucky enough to catch up. I sat alone in the old security division briefing room, the cold, white LED lights casting faint reflections off the glass table, still damp from an untouched glass of water. The door opened quietly. I didn't need to turn to know who it was. Got a minute? Tyler's voice softer than usual. I didn't answer right away. He stepped forward, pulled out the chair across from me and sat, hands clasped together on the table like he was preparing for something important. I don't even know where to start, he said, eyes fixed on the edge of my uniform. I set my pen down and looked directly at him. Then start with the truth. Did you ever actually want to know what I do? Tyler hesitated, then shook his head. No, I guess not. I figured you were just doing some admin work on base somewhere. Every time Mom and Dad mentioned you, it was like, she's fine, she's got structure, but no emotion. Like you'd been out of the family narrative for years. Because I didn't take the path they wanted, I said, my voice calm but firm. And you followed every step they hoped for. MBA, marriage, house, kids. You don't have to explain. I understand why they were always proud of you. But at some point you started thinking, I was the one who lost. Tyler looked at me, something unfamiliar in his expression. No arrogance, no excuses. I did think that. I thought I was ahead of you, in everything. Until this morning. I spoke slowly. It's not just about this morning. It's about all the years no one asked what I was carrying, what I was sacrificing. Every call was about your job, your milestones, your success. If I ever mentioned anything, it got cut off with, "Oh, the military must be stable." He lowered his head. I have no excuse. The air between us stretched tight, not with tension, but with rawness. I never needed praise, I continued, but I needed to be seen as someone with capability, not the stubborn one who took a detour. If you think this uniform is about reclaiming position, you still don't get it. No, Tyler interrupted. I think you're the only one in this family who actually carved their own path, without asking permission. That caught me off guard. He went on without deflecting. I was guided at every step. Dad took me to college orientation. Mom wrote my recommendation letters. When I got hired at Sentry, the whole family treated it like it was the Monroe legacy fulfilled. But you had to prove yourself, inch by inch, with no one behind you. And you still thought I was the one who'd gone off track, I said. Soft as paper, but enough to silence him. The outer door opened. My mother walked in, holding a crumpled tissue. She paused when she saw us facing each other. Can I sit? She asked, voice smaller than usual. I nodded. She pulled up a chair. Didn't meet my eyes, just gently placed her hand on the table. I couldn't picture you standing in front of that room today. The way they called you Colonel Monroe, the way they listened to every word. It felt like I was watching someone else. That was me, I replied, the daughter you had, but never tried to understand. She bit her lower lip, hesitant. I said terrible things, more than once, but I never realized. You felt so dismissed. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my gaze steady. You don't have to apologize for disagreeing with my choices. You're allowed not to like the military, or understand why I chose this path. But you don't have the right to belittle it, or reduce it to something temporary. You don't have to love the road I walk, but you do have to respect the person walking it. She nodded slightly, eyes misting. For the first time in years, she didn't argue. didn't justify. Tyler looked between us, then slowly stood. I'll never see you the same again. Maybe I was just the pre-designed version all this time. But you built the whole map from scratch. I never understood that before. He paused, then added, if you're willing. I want to learn from you. Not just about the job, but how to hold on to what you believe in, even when no one else does. I said nothing, just quietly placed my hand on his shoulder, a gesture that needed no words. My mother lightly touched my wrist. The touch wasn't hesitant. It was real, like someone realizing they'd been lost from something vital for too long. The sunlight angled through the dusty, frosted glass, casting uneven light across the table. I looked at my mother, my brother, then out into the hallway, where strangers passed by, unaware of what had just shifted. No declarations, no ceremony. As long as, from that moment on, they stopped looking down on the path I had chosen to walk with my whole life. A spring night, the wind from the Potomac drifted through the oak trees lining Virginia Avenue, carrying the damp scent and soft hum of a city that hadn't yet fallen asleep. In an apartment on the 15th floor of Embassy Row, the golden light from the kitchen spilled across a carefully set dining table, white linen napkins, citrus-scented candles, and an already uncorked bottle of red wine. I had just set down the tray of crisp, toasted bread when the doorbell rang. My father entered first, holding a mahogany-colored frame. He didn't say a word, just lifted it up for me to see. Inside was a full-page newspaper spread, the woman behind the Pentagon's largest digital infrastructure defense system. Below the headline was a photo of me and General Ford at the ribbon cutting of the Integrated Security Command Center in Arlington. I brought a copy to hang in the living room, he said hesitantly, like he was testing my reaction. Thanks, Dad, I said, taking the frame, really seeing him after nothing but work calls and short emails. Is this one of those special laminated versions? I took it straight to the print shop the day the paper came out. They did a great job with it. He stepped aside. My mom walked in carrying an apple pie. Her face was still reserved, but her eyes had softened. This one's how you like it, she said. Low sugar filling, crisp crust, a touch of ground cinnamon. I nodded, pulled out her chair. No flattery, no sugary pretense, but in every gesture there was quiet change. 10 minutes later, Tyler and Megan arrived. He brought a bottle of Oregon wine with a label note that read, oaky aroma with a hint of spice. We shook hands like two professionals now, not childhood rivals constantly compared. I applied the testing framework you suggested, Tyler said as we set food on the table. The internal tech team pushed back at first, but after they saw the drop in error rates, everyone signed off. Good. Glad it translated well, I replied, placing the salmon salad in the center. I'll admit, he added, some of those logic layers, I never even imagined them before reading your documentation. I really couldn't have done it like you. I smiled. It wasn't a compliment. It was a truth spoken plainly, without discomfort or competition. The doorbell rang again. I walked over and opened it to find General Eleanor Weston standing there in civilian clothes, long gray coat, and a smile that immediately put me at ease. Right on time, I said, stepping aside. Can't be late when your goddaughter invites you to dinner, right? I introduced her to my family. My father shook her hand, his gaze a mix of respect and quiet embarrassment. Thank you for believing in my daughter, he said softly. No thanks needed, Eleanor replied, her tone steady. Hannah's always had everything she needed to succeed. My job was just to stay out of her way. My mom offered her a seat. During dinner, Eleanor shared a few light stories about our military team, the training rounds at Fort Meade, and the time I pushed back against a high-level technical decision on security grounds and got it overturned. Each story was a puzzle piece my parents had never seen before, not because I had hidden them, but because they never knew how to ask. You often have to make decisions that affect the whole system? My mother asked, her voice free of doubt. Almost every week, Eleanor answered for me, Not in some heroic way, just in a way that's calculated, accountable, and collaborative. She doesn't need applause, she just needs space to do her job. Everyone fell silent for a moment. Glasses clinked, candlelight flickered. After dinner, as we moved to the living room, my father stood and raised his glass. "Tonight, there's something in this house that needs to be said," he said, looking straight at me. "You've proven that some paths, though different, can lead to places no one expected. Not because you're unusual, but because you dared to choose differently and followed through." He tapped his glass to mine, the wine shimmering red with golden flecks. I tapped back. No words needed. Later, Tyler sat beside me, opening a secure access diagram on his phone. "Can you take a look at this permission segmentation? I'm still unsure about the buffer zone between tiers. Might come up in next week's meeting." I tilted my head, scanned it, and nodded. Under the warm glow of the room, our exchange felt like something between two colleagues. Two people who'd grown up under the same roof, once divided by belief, now meeting in the middle. Night settled in. The apartment no longer carried the uneven tension of past reunions. No one tried to fill the air with empty praise. Every gesture was measured in sincerity. Nothing more, nothing less. I walked Eleanor to the door. She gently held my hand. "From now on," she said, "they won't just know who you are. They'll understand why they need to rethink who they are." I squeezed her hand. No one needed to say anything more. In my heart, I'd known the answer for a long time. But tonight, they finally started hearing it too. Hannah's story is a clear reminder that real value doesn't need to be flashy to be seen. Even after being dismissed and overlooked by her own family, she stayed true to her path, succeeding through skill and discipline. Once the truth emerged, respect was no longer something she chased, it became something others had to learn how to give. In the real world, independence and resilience still speak the loudest. What do you think of Hannah's journey and how she earned recognition from the very people who once doubted her? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family and inner strength.